What's up, everybody? It's the Junkyard Dawgcast. I'm Jake Rowe with Dogs 24/7. With me, Kipp Adams. Postgame edition. Georgia beats Arkansas 37-0, complete dominance, 21-0 first quarter. Georgia has outscored the opponent. What is that now, Kipp? 56-0 in the first quarter in the last two games. Georgia has outscored the opponent now. I don't know. Let's do a little math here in my head. Round the 99-0 in the last two games. Georgia's almost pitching a hundred against his last two opponents. It's an incredible run. Arkansas ranked number 8. Listen, there are a lot of folks out there, and they're going to say, well, Georgia, Arkansas was a fraud. Arkansas is this. Listen, you may not think they are the number 8 team in the country. I think Arkansas was deserving, at the very least, to be in a top 20 team, top 15 team. Maybe they are a top 10 team. We won't know that until we look down the line and understand just how good this Georgia team is. And right now, it's looking like it is a really good team. And Stetson Bennett gets to start. JT Daniels was not able to go with the lat injury. We kind of talked about that, brought it up kind of middle of the week this past week, and it mushroomed a little bit as the week went on. But, Kipp, when you look at that game, obviously the defense is what it is. We sound like a broken record talking about the defense. What did you think of the game plan on the offensive side and kind of the way Georgia went about it? Because, I don't know, I've got some thoughts on that, but I want to hear what you have to say.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me of other games early this year where I think it's pretty obvious that Kirby Smart and the coaching staff knew that they were going to win the battle at the line of scrimmage. They kind of knew going in. And hey, if Kirby and Stetson are to be believed, they knew who their starting quarterback was going to be earlier in their week, or at least they prepared like Stetson was going to have a strong chance to be the starter. So it seems like they kind of knew going in that, one, we have an advantage on the line of scrimmage, and two, with Stetson, that this was kind of the best game plan that was going to present, the outcome that we saw today, which is, again, just dominance along the line. The ground game got, just basically imposed their will on Arkansas and to let them know early on that, this was going to be a quick game in terms of just, again, like I said, when you have the ground game like that, the game's going to be over early. And that's kind of what I thought, that this was going to be a game that, by 2:30, it would be over. But, I mean, this game was kind of over almost immediately. And so, I mean, that just tells me they saw something on film that told them that they were clearly going to outmatch Arkansas, and they went ahead and just went through the script. And once they saw what they thought they saw, they knew that this game was definitely decided very early on. And so they can just go ahead and continue to go with that game plan. There was no real need to make a lot of adjustments. And so it's just really intriguing, because I've talked about this with, whatever Todd Monken sees, he's been right just basically every game this year. Whatever he's seen from the opposing defense on film, he's been prepared for that, and it's just really interesting. Opponents have yet to really make a lot of adjustments against what Todd Monken's been throwing at him. So credit to him for the game plan this week.
I'll tell you what, though, at this point, how do you adjust? Because Georgia's shown that it can punch real hard with its right hand, and today it showed it can punch real hard with its perceived left hand as well. And listen, Arkansas wanted to make Georgia be patient. Arkansas wanted to make Georgia, have to fight for every first down, for every score, no big plays, all this stuff. I think Georgia's longest play today was 27 yards. Georgia almost played into Arkansas's hand a little bit, but basically told them, hey, we're not going to make the mistake. We're not going to make the mistake that's going to throw us off of a drive. Georgia played penalty-free football. Arkansas did not. And Kipp, kudos for bringing up the penalties, because you brought that up in the middle of the week. They had 13 for 100 yards. But Georgia didn't commit the penalty. Georgia didn't allow the tackle for the loss. Georgia didn't allow the sack. They didn't throw the interception, although they had one opportunity to. But
it was close, but no turnovers.
Yeah, it was close, but they didn't get it. And that's the way I think that you – listen, if I'm a defensive coordinator looking at Georgia going forward, you're back to the drawing board as hey, we got to mix it up. you've got to mix it up against Georgia now. You can't sit and try to do one thing and take one thing away, even if Stetson Bennett's a quarterback, because he has the weapons. I mean, but the emergence of Brock Bowers, the emergence of Adonai Mitchell, A.D. Mitchell, for those who want to, get after me for saying that wrong, Adonai, however you pronounce it, A.D. Mitchell. Jermaine Burton being who he is, getting Darnell Washington back, who was a force at times today in the run game. All of that stuff, I think you've got to respect Georgia both ways now, whether Stetson Bennett's a quarterback, whether JT Daniels is a quarterback. And to me, that's something that can help Georgia going forward this season, because Auburn next week is not going to be able to just to rest on, okay, well, Georgia's going to struggle running the ball. Or, okay, Georgia's going to struggle throwing the ball. Because Arkansas, they were able to control Texas A&M and Texas at the line of scrimmage with that three-man front, with that drop eight thing. And Georgia was able to come in and say, hey, listen, we're not going to be able to just sit here and throw the football against 8 men in coverage. Let's run this thing, and let's run it hard, and let's commit to it. And Kirby talked about, Kipp, about how all week long they talked to the receivers, they talked to the tight ends, they talked to the running backs and the offensive line, and the commitment was there. We're going to run them out of this three-man front, or we're going to make them, kind of dig their own grave with it. And Arkansas ultimately dug their own grave with it, because they stuck to their guns, and it was over by the time they could adjust to anything. And I think a lot of that had to do with the special teams touchdown as well. I mean, if it's 14-0 or 17-0 going into the half, it's a lot different than it being a 3 full touchdown, 24-point game going into the half. To me, that's kind of where that turned. Let's talk about the defense a little bit here, Kipp. I mean, broken record, man. Defensive front dominates again. Tough matchup for Arkansas. We said it all week.
Yeah, now we're at, 19 of 20 quarters without allowing a touchdown. And the defense has allowed 16 points now through 5 games. I think you got to really tip their cap to this squad. It's obviously deep and a very talented group. And I think it's pretty clear that, Georgia's strongest leaders are some of its best players. And you see that across the field on both sides of the ball, but just especially on this defense, the accountability, not just Jordan Davis, not just Nakobe Dean, not just Nolan Smith, but just, at every level, these guys are pushing each other. They are not satisfied with being very good. They want to be truly great. I think it was 7 of 10 Arkansas drives were 3 and outs. I mean, it's just truly an impressive stat. The fact that, we mentioned Arkansas, I think they had 101 yards in penalties, and they only had 162 total yards. So Georgia got almost as many yards back on penalties than Arkansas was able to gain in this game. So I just think, again, it was definitely an impressive performance. We talked a lot about how maybe the best wide receiver in the game, in the SEC, plays for Arkansas, and Treylon Burks, and he went out there and had 3 catches for 10 yards. So I don't think you can – obviously, overall, you look at all the numbers, you can't overlook the fact that there was an elite player on the field that was negated in this game. And again, we mentioned the other guys that they have as far as explosive players, but Georgia's secondary is – it's getting better and better each week. Is that a product of the front 7? You never really know. That's kind of a chicken and the egg thing. They're definitely getting into the backfield and causing a lot of issues at the line of scrimmage. But, they're not giving up the big plays. They didn't give up any big plays in this game. And I think you really have to credit that secondary. They're getting more and more experience each week. And I just think that their quality of play is getting better and better. And also, got to also point to Hot Pod. I think he's now made 6 field goals in a row, his longest of the year. I think this year was a 45 in this game. So, he's starting to get confident there as well. That's obviously a big aspect, because at some point Georgia's going to be in another close game this year. They're not going to all be like this, more than likely. And so that leg's going to be key. So I think that's also something you got to point to as far as guys gaining confidence and getting better each week. Jack Podlesny's out there and getting the job done and that aspect of the game as well.
And much like the offense finding a new way to kind of get after the defense this week, this game kind of belonged to another defensive lineman. Last week it was Jalen Carter had a big game. The week before, I can't even remember who had a big game against South Carolina, but it was somebody. Nolan Smith, I think, had a big game against South Carolina. Well, today it was Devontae Wyatt's turn, and he led the team with 6 tackles, and he had a sack and a half, and he had a tackle and a half for a loss, and he threw in a forced fumble in there as well. And Georgia didn't get a turnover, but I mean, every week it's just a different guy. I mean, Jordan Davis in week 1, you had, Jalen Carter again last week, Nolan Smith the week before that. I believe Adam Anderson had a couple of sacks, even had a sack today, had a couple of sacks against UAB or somewhere like that. Every single game, there's a different star. There's a different standout. And listen, when Kirby says you're a leader, you're not. That's kind of, he mentioned something about that having to do with turnovers today, which I thought was kind of weird. It was almost a goalpost moving moment. And boy, was he in a mood in that press conference. Dude was in a mood today. Did not want to talk about JT Daniels' injury, so we're not even going to talk about it. He's day to day. He's week to week, okay? He'll heal up at some point. They said they're not worried about him. They're going to give him some time to rest. You may see Stetson Bennett start against Auburn, and we'll try to have that covered for you. But going back to if you're elite or you're either elite or you're not, well, one sign of an elite team is this guy doesn't have a big game this week, another guy does. Somebody steps up, and that's kind of where this Georgia team is right now. And we'll see kind of where that goes. Kipp, any parting shots about this game? Anything you noticed, anything you saw from this game that you want to bring up before we let these folks get about their day?
I know one thing Kirby Smart was fired up about, and he called them elite, and that was the crowd. I don't think I've ever heard a noon crowd as loud as they were. And what did I say? Like I mentioned, the penalties. Arkansas comes out the gate with back-to-back penalties. I mean, you got to give credit to the crowd. That was definitely a 12th-man atmosphere out there. And again, a noon kickoff. I know it got hot real quick out there. Hopefully everyone stayed hydrated. But that was definitely an impact. Early on in the game, you didn't know, how this thing was going to unfold. The crowd stepped up when he needed it to. So I know Kirby Smart was real happy and real pleased about that.
All right, we'll have Rusty back with us on Monday to shut the door on this Arkansas game and to maybe start looking a little bit ahead to Auburn. We'll be back with you then on Wednesday and Thursday. But for this episode of the Junkyard Dawgcast, post-game edition, 37-0 Georgia over Arkansas. That's all we got. I'm Jake Rowe with Dogs 24/7. He's Kipp Adams from the same place. Y'all take it easy.